Everybody, I'm Gail Schnee. I'm with the EDC, and we are so excited to have Kayla Miller here. She is the research coordinator with SBDC, and she's here all the way from Spokane. Welcome. It's really important that we learn about cybersecurity, and we're going to learn important basics of cybersecurity, including current scams, etc. This is being recorded and it will be sent out to you later if you want to hear a recap. And we also have online attachments that I'll be able to send you later on today. And at the end, we will have a survey that we can fill out here for everybody here in person and one in the chat box for people. We have Zoom people as well. So yeah, welcome.
Thank you so much.
To have you here.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming today. So today's presentation is going to cover policies for small business. We're going to be going over one nationally recognized cybersecurity framework, which is the Cybersecurity Maturity Model. There are lots of different frameworks you can use, but the SBDC uses the Cybersecurity Maturity Model for our trainings because it's a really good foundational step for small businesses. And then we will be doing a little policy writing activity and then covering current scams and how to avoid them. My name is Kayla Miller. I am the research coordinator and cybersecurity training coordinator for the Washington SBDC. I currently hold 2 cybersecurity certifications, and before my time as the cybersecurity coordinator, I was working in our market research department at the SBDC. So I want to start today with learning a little bit about you and your needs, your business. So if we want to go around the room and introduce yourself, your business, what industry you're in, about how many devices your business uses, that'll help me kind of understand the network sizes that we're going to be working with. And then if you have any specific cybersecurity concerns right off the bat, we can also talk about those, but I'll be covering questions throughout the presentation. So just go ahead and raise your hand, blurt out questions, put them in the chat if you're online. And also if you're online, if you want to introduce yourself in the chat, that would be great. So I'll start right here.
I have a small retail business in Friday Harbor. It's the Island Wine Company. My name is Catherine Kerr. My husband and I run the business, and basically I'm here because I'm interested in things related to credit card terminals and security. We also use a couple of iPads down at the store.
Okay.
But that's about it. It's a small operation.
Great.
I'm Marie DiChristina. I don't have a business currently. I was DiChristina Photography, now registered with the state of Washington. It's DiChristina Designs. I primarily, as of late, have been doing fundraising events. So I was dealing with Square and all my concerns about that. I just had a fundraiser going on, and I just want to make sure that I keep myself safe, and when I'm working for somebody else with a fundraising event, that I keep them safe and all the cashiers. I was going to have 12 cashiers, so that was pretty nerve-wracking with Square.
Yeah,
it's something that I don't use all the time, and so that was my primary concern, is security.
Yeah, great. Yeah.
I'm Kathy Crane, and I have a small business, Crane Studio, and I'm a glass artist. So I work in that glass industry. That's important to me to make sure my device is very small, it's very single program. So I'm just here to suck up all the information I can.
Great, thanks for coming.
I'm Chris Reed. I'm here in 2 capacities. One is I'm the score counselor on the island. I just want to make sure I'm up professionally on the latest in cybersecurity, and I'm also on the boards of 4 nonprofits and the finance committees and the audit committees and business in which I'm trying to make sure we have proper protection for our nonprofits.
Yeah, great, thank you.
I'm Justin Rhoda, and I have at this point, a small social purpose corporation called Basetech, and I am primarily acting in my function to promote and develop unique musical and audio devices and modalities. So I've been working on this for over 20 years. Some of it's been in the course of being a student I started to do media installations and now my current company, I'm looking into doing memory care events, which is basically kind of like a DJ type 50s and 60s, 70s music rave for elder folks as a way of doing memory care and introducing them to newer music as a way to run a day-to-day business operation. I have the other stuff that I would say, you know, why security? Well, have something worth stealing.
Mhm.
And that's my primary property is intellectual property. So
Yeah.
that's why I'm here.
Great, thank you.
My name's Jamie and I work at North Sound Communications on Lopez. I'm an electrical contractor. And I think we do take online payments and we do all the checks, but we probably have 6 devices, like the computer, iPads and then, yeah.
Mhm.
Anyways, we just wanna make sure we're doing everything right. So, cause I mean, I feel like scams come in all different shapes and forms, and so we
Yeah.
just need to learn to keep ourselves.
Great, thank you.
I'm Casey. I work for North Sound Communications. I was just sent to keep her in line. So, my only job here today. So, yeah, we're just here together.
Great, thanks so much for coming.
We did also have one person in the chat.
Fantastic.
Brian from the admin of Mullis Center. So he's having trouble with his mic, but he's here. So
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan. Great. So we'll go ahead and get started. So the first thing I like to cover is a few myths that small businesses tend to believe about cybersecurity. A few of these already came up in our introductions. So the first myth is that you're too small to be targeted by a hacker. But the truth is, hackers don't care how small you are, and they actually know that small businesses don't have the resources that big corporations have to invest in cybersecurity. So small businesses tend to be easier targets and therefore get targeted by hackers. The next myth is that you don't have anything of value that hackers would want. But of course, we have our intellectual property, we have money in our banks, we have lots of things that hackers are interested in. And hackers, again, they don't care how big you are. They'll take a really small score and they'll just take a lot of them, right? That's tends to be a business model that hackers do. They just do it a lot instead of targeting a really big company. They target small ones and they target a lot of small ones. And the last one is, well, if it happens, right? And the truth is you don't have to sit and wait to get hacked. And while we can't guarantee that you won't get hacked, we can show you how to build your walls, how to lock your door, how to make sure that you're not an easy target. So when we talk about cybersecurity, we're talking about managing risk. And there's 4 types of ways that we manage risk. And I like to start this with an analogy of driving a car. So anytime we're driving a car, we are accepting some level of risk. We understand that we can't control the drivers around us. We are accepting that. We could avoid it. We could decide that we're not going to drive at all if it's too risky for us. Maybe if there's a blizzard and there's really bad roads one day, we avoid that risk. We don't go out with our car. We can also reduce our risk. We can make sure that we're doing car maintenance, that we have our airbags on, things like that. And then we can transfer risk by getting car insurance to make sure that we can cover our costs if something happens to us. And the same exact thing is true about cybersecurity as well. So anytime we're online, anytime we're doing anything digitally, we are accepting some kind of risk. The only way to completely avoid all cyber risk is to go off grid, throw your phone away, move into a cabin, right? So we're accepting some level of risk, and it's good to understand that you're accepting risk so that we can manage it. We can also reduce our risk, and that's what we're mainly going to be focusing on today, is strategies to reduce your cybersecurity risks. And then we can also transfer some of our risk. There is cybersecurity insurance that you can get if you're interested in it. And to get cyber insurance, you will need to have documentation that you are doing your due diligence to protect yourself from cyber risks. And we do that through PPE, which here stands for policies, procedures, and evidence. So policies are a written document for your business that are aligned with a recognized framework. Again, today we're going to be talking about the cybersecurity maturity model. Depending on your business, you may have to adhere to other frameworks. You may be subject to HIPAA requirements or the payment card industry data security standards, which we'll talk about just a little bit later in this presentation. So you'll be writing a policy for the practices in a framework. Then we have our procedure documents. These are more specific to our business. They would reference our physical environment, our specific devices, and the information and data that your company uses and needs to protect. You can think of these kind of like training documents. A new hire should be able to read your procedures and understand how they are expected to uphold your cybersecurity policies in a day-to-day business setting. Then we have our evidence. So evidence documents are anything that proves you're adhering to your cybersecurity policies and procedures. This can include documentation of system settings, lists of active system users, lists of recently disabled accounts, any kind of audit logs or media destruction records or visitor records. We'll touch on all of those as we go through our practices. And all of these put you at a better position to prove that you are protecting your company, and they can also protect you from the worst of litigation. So if a data breach happens and you have these evidence documents, you may be able to protect yourself from some of the fines that would be induced there. Yeah.
This is a hard question,
Mhm.
but when I think about the spectrum of risks which are existential to a small business,
Mhm.
fire, fraud, cybersecurity, is there any data to say, my senses of cybersecurity went up pretty high, number one or number two? Is there any data that sort of identifies that risk?
I haven't seen any data of that specifically. I would have to look into it, but cybersecurity is growing really, really quickly as a risk factor. I would say it's probably up there, especially right now, especially with the use of AI by hackers. Things are
Something of
getting scary.
a way of communicating with my board, to say that
Mhm.
that you get fire insurance, this is of the same magnitude in investments here to protect your organization.
Yeah, absolutely. The main stat that I like to cite that I know off the top of my head is that most cybersecurity incidents are caused by human error. So we'll talk a lot in our practices about training your employees and making sure that everyone in your company is trained in cybersecurity policies, because it only takes one employee to make a little mistake if they're not aware of your cybersecurity policies. Yeah, so these evidence documents will be needed if you're interested in getting cybersecurity insurance. And if you are interested in insurance, I would talk to your provider and make sure that you know exactly what's expected of you, and what you would need to provide to actually receive a payout from that. And I also like to start with some of the benefits of cybersecurity. I know it can be a little bit scary, but there are benefits. So first, you can avoid some fines if you can prove that you're doing your due diligence. You can qualify for cyber insurance if you have policies, procedures, and evidence. You can protect your reputation, make sure that your customers trust you with their data, right? Um, we're also going to talk about protecting your bank accounts and your social media accounts. That's really important for small businesses. And protecting your employees and your customers. We all think about customer data, I think, when we think about data breaches, but all of you also collect information on your employees, and it's really important to protect their private information as well. Yeah.
Who's issuing fines?
So that would be the Washington State Legislature. If you have a data breach, you have to report it to the Attorney General. And then depending on the nature of the breach, you may get litigation from them.
Is that supposed to be a risk of operating a small business or some kind of perverse reward?
If you have a data breach and you have cybersecurity practices in place, and you can say, this was not because of negligence, this was because we were targeted because a bad hacker did something bad, you can avoid some of those fines. If you were not protecting your data, if they can say you were just being negligent with it, then they will hit you with the fines. Okay. The next thing I like to talk about when I'm talking about cybersecurity and data is the ways that we want to protect it. So this is, there's 3 parts of data that we want to protect. We want to protect the confidentiality. This is your data private and secure. Also important is integrity and availability. So integrity means, has your data been changed by either a bad actor or by a mistake? So integrity is about data accuracy and usability. If it's been changed, you might not be able to use it anymore. And then availability is about access. So is your access being blocked by a bad actor or by a connection issue? For your data to be useful, again, you need to be able to access it, right? And malware can compromise the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of data, depending on the type of malware. And the practices that we'll go over today can help you protect yourself from malware. And before we jump into the CMM, or the Cybersecurity Maturity Model, I do want to talk about some fundamentals. So if you don't have any cybersecurity practices for your business, these are some really great places to start. First, we have multi-factor authentication. I think most of us by now are kind of aware of this. It's that text message code usually that you have to get from your account before you log into your account. That adds an extra layer of protection. So if someone has access to your password or hacks your password, there's an extra layer of protection there blocking them from getting into your account. Then we have data backups. These are really important for maintaining the integrity of your data and the availability of your data. A general rule of thumb is using the 3-2-1 rule. This requires 3 copies of your data, 2 archived copies, and 1 working copy on 2 different media types. So that could be like a hard drive, and in the cloud, you want 2 different places. And then 1 copy should be kept off-site. And that is to protect yourself from maybe like a natural disaster or a fire. You want 1 of those copies to be kept somewhere off-site. Then we have patches and updates. Patches and updates do a lot of different things. They can fix user interfaces, right? But one of the most important things that they do is they close discovered hacker entry points. And that means that if your software or your devices are not updated, they are vulnerable. And last is employee training. So like I said before, most cybersecurity incidents happen because of human error. So it's really important that all of your employees are aware of these things and that you're training them on the cybersecurity practices. Okay, so now we're going to jump into the meat of this, which is the Cybersecurity Maturity Model. This is level 1 of 3 levels. Level 1 is a really good foundational place to start for small businesses. This is a standard developed by the National Institute of Standards and Technology, specifically NIST SP 800, 171, and 172. It has 6 domains that we'll be going over today, each with a number of practices. And the goals of our training tends to be for business owners to create written policies corresponding to each one of these practices. And we will have a handout later, this policy workbook, and it goes through each of the practices of the CMM with some guiding questions to help you get started on writing that. Okay, so the first domain is physical protection. Before we start securing our systems and doing all of the tech stuff, we want to secure physically. All of that stuff doesn't matter if someone has access to your actual laptop or to your business, right? So we want to protect our physical boundaries. We do this by limiting physical access to information systems, equipment, and sensitive areas of our business to only authorized individuals. Then we can escort and monitor any visitors who are not authorized, maintain logs of physical access, and control and manage physical access devices. Physical access devices just means keys, key cards, key codes, anything that gives someone access to your business. You want to make sure that you are managing those so you know exactly who has the keys to your business, who has access to your business, right? So to address physical protection in a business policy, you may include what systems and equipment should be located in secured areas, when specific fences, doors, or filing cabinets need to be locked. For example, if you're printing sensitive documents, then your printer needs to be in a secure location so that no one can just walk by and pick up that secure document off your printer. Your manual should list what type of locks your business uses, if that's physical keys, key cards, key codes, whatever works for your business, and who has access to those keys. Keys and other physical access devices are only strong protection if they're controlled and if you know who has access to them, right? So keep a list of who has these keys and make sure that you create policies for collecting keys or disabling key codes when an employee leaves. Next, we're going to talk about visitors. So all the practices discussed in the CMM can be customized to fit each small business. So in the case of visitors, a general policy would address having a receptionist hand out visitor badges, having an authorized employee supervise the visitor and escort them around the business, and having the receptionist make them fill out a log with their signature and the date that they were there, why they were visiting the business. That policy wouldn't work super well for a retail business or a restaurant, right? But those businesses may address visitors with policies like having a bell on your front door to notify employees when someone enters your business. You may require an employee to be out front anytime there's a customer in your store. You may have cameras on specific merchandise. You would have clearly marked and secured employee-only areas that customers can't access, things like that. Next, we're going to be talking about media protection. So media protection domain discusses the best practices for destroying data when it's no longer needed. Information can be leaked when users delete files and forget to clear the trash bin, leaving them very easily accessible to anyone. But even when they're fully deleted, even when you clear that trash bin, they can still be reconstructed by bad actors. So if you take your laptop just as it is and put it in the dumpster and someone picks it up, they can get lots and lots of data out of it, right? So when we are disposing of media, we want to make sure that we securely dispose of it. This usually means physical destruction. That's the strongest protection is physically destroying things. So shredding paper files, crushing thumb drives, cutting up CDs into multiple small pieces, drilling holes in hard drives, things like that. Some sensitive data, like health information, may also have legal requirements for how it's stored and how you dispose of it. Another secure option is using a secure erase function. This is different from a normal erase function in that it uses between 3 and 7 layers of random data to overwrite your data. And if you're interested in that, you'll want to look up a secure erase feature. Apple has this in OS in the secure empty trash can under disk utility. And there are also options for that for Dell or for PC. And then there are also third-party services. So if you don't feel comfortable drilling holes into your hard drive, you can work with a third-party company that will do that for you. This third-party company should give you an evidence document, a media destruction record that says, we have securely disposed of this, and then you can keep that record for, for your records, for your evidence, right? And if you're using a third-party company, it's important that you make sure you have eyes on all of your devices or paper files or whatever you're giving them. So for example, you can give them a box of paper files, but you wouldn't want to put your box of paper files on the sidewalk, go inside and wait for something to pick it up, right? You want to make sure that you're maintaining that eyes on on whatever you're getting rid of. Yeah. Also in media protection, I did want to touch on the payment card industry data security standards. So this isn't something specifically covered by the CMM, but it is really important to small businesses. And a lot of the practices covered, or the security standards of the PCI DSS, overlap quite a bit with the CMM. So for example, it is a little bit blurry on the screen, but we have user role-based access control. We'll be covering that when we talk about the access control domain. We have limiting access to physical data. We just talked about that, right? We have using antivirus software, which is covered in the CMM, using firewalls. So very similar standards to the CMM. You'll notice a lot of overlap between any kind of cybersecurity standards. You know, there are the standard things that you want to do to protect your data. But while we're here, the main thing that I wanted to talk about is if you're interested in the payment card industry data security standards, you'll want to talk to your processor. So like you said, if you use Square, if you use Clover or Leaders Merchant Services, you'll want to talk with your provider. And providers often require merchants to take a PCI compliance self-assessment questionnaire. And that questionnaire will usually give you suggestions for things that you need to do to become PCI compliant. It may tell you you need to implement your firewall, or you need to make sure you're encrypting your data, or whatever it is. Also, one of the most important things you can do here is make sure that you're using an updated card processor. So if you're using a really outdated payment processing machine, that is much more vulnerable than using a new one that is updated and has all the protections that the modern technology does. Some other things I wanted to highlight here. If you're using public Wi-Fi for transactions, that's a big no-no. You'll want to make sure that you're using private Wi-Fi. Also make sure that you are changing default passwords for any network Wi-Fi or any equipment. Default passwords are usually very easily guessed by hackers. Some of them even just know them because all default passwords are the same for certain equipment. So that can be really dangerous. You're gonna want to make sure you change those default passwords. Yeah, so that's the main thing I want to talk about here is make sure that you're in touch with your payment processor and that you know their requirements. Take that questionnaire if they have one available. And they will give you suggestions to make sure that you're PCI compliant. Yeah.
Look, another hard question.
Yeah.
And we're all small businesses here or nonprofits, 1 to 5 employees. This is very daunting. It's very appropriate for a large organization. But in a sense of like what the sources of risk were, X% of risk comes from employee behavior, Y% comes from physical impact, whatever. So we could prioritize, go down that list in terms of what's most important to tackle first. If you provide that information.
I don't have that right now. I can look at some reports and see if I can find something that addresses that for you. Yeah.
So what's a rank list of what we should be implementing?
Yeah, so it's about 68% of cybersecurity incidents that happen from human error. So employee training is one of the really big ones on the list. We'll talk a lot about passwords and multi-factor authentication. That's another one that's really high on the list of priorities. What else would be really, really up there? So like I did start with the foundations, which are multi-factor authentication, data backups, patches and updates. That's another one that's really high up there, is making sure.
The malware protecting.
Yeah. So anti-malware and updating your devices, updating your software that you use, updating the anti-malware software that you use, just like any software that needs to be updated. And any software can be a vulnerability. So if you don't need a software, I would recommend getting rid of it. If you have an old software on your computer, you're not using it and you're not updating it, it can be a vulnerability.
I mean, even something as like simple as like, well, I'm not actually using the computer or the phone for a critical business function right now, so I'm turning it off. That would limit the time that the device is actually logged into the network, and would basically address, you know, well, the attack is happening in the Philippines while I'm asleep on a
Right.
computer that's logged in over here that doesn't need to be logged in, you know.
That's
There's
interesting.
some things that are,
Yeah.
I think there's a geek layer of thinking, and then there's an operator layer, and then there's a very basic layer.
Yeah.
And I think looking at it from like, well, here's the very geeky stuff that you kind of take credentials to actually even comprehend of it, and then there's the like, you know, this part of it, which is trying to make all these assessments, and then there's like a very basic layer of just like being observant.
Mhm.
And security is really just about noticing
Mhm.
and implementing changes if there's something basically that could be done to correct something that's of exposure.
Yeah.
Like not having a device on or logged in, if it's not needed to be on or logged in, is a pretty massive shift between vulnerability of having something just be 24/7 sitting there, like glowing like a chest of little coins, you know?
Yeah, and you bring up a really great point, which is that there are a lot of cybersecurity things out there that a general person may not be able to understand ever. Like I'm getting certifications and I still sometimes feel like I'm barely cracking the surface of cybersecurity. It's really huge, right? So one of the things I really recommend for small businesses is get in touch with a IT service provider, a cybersecurity service provider. Know who is in your area before an incident occurs. You don't want to be scrambling if something happens to get help from someone. I would really recommend being in communication with one of those providers and understanding what they have available if you ever need it. Yeah, really recommend utilizing those people, those experts, because they have so much knowledge of such a really complicated topic. Yeah. Okay, we're going to move on to the next domain, identification and authentication. So identification means that each employee should have a unique username so that you always know exactly who is on your network. This also means that you should not be sharing user accounts. In general, you don't want two people to have access to the same email account. You want separate logins for each person. And then authentication means you can verify that users are who they say they are using a complex and secure password and also multi-factor authentication.
Yeah, I just want to reinforce the first one. So we had an incident here in the island where a treasurer of a nonprofit had her personal accounts compromised and linked to her nonprofit. Treasurer responsibilities in both accounts were empty.
Oh, yeah.
So I've gone in and you can go to Fidelity and other people and get a separate logins for your nonprofit or business accounts for your personal accounts.
Yeah, that separation can be really important. So in this domain, one of the first things that we want to do is create a policy for account creation that ensures all employees or contractors or anyone else accessing your systems has a unique user account. And we also want to create a list of all users and their unique user IDs, create a list of all devices and their unique media access control addresses, and a list of all software that your company uses on company computers. This could also be a good place to organize your software vendors and where you need to check for updates, or reminding yourself to implement updates on a good schedule. And I recommend this inventory of accounts be stored on a single document, like a spreadsheet. That way, if there is a repeated username, you can catch it and you can make sure that you're giving out a unique username. And you'll want to make sure that all of these lists are updated with each person hired or any position changes or separation, and that equipment lists are updated. for any device or software acquisition or destruction. This next slide is a little example of an inventory spreadsheet. So here we have the employee name and position, username, a temporary password. It's important that temporary passwords are unique, preferably randomly generated and complicated, and that the user is prompted to change it on their first login to something more suitable for them. This also has a group assignment column. We'll talk about that more when we talk about permissions. We also have the device assigned to each person. And you'll see here in this particular example, we have a printer for sales and a printer for finance. That way, when a finance employee is printing off something sensitive, these sales employees don't have access to that printer. And this particular usernaming convention uses first initial, last name, dot department name. You can use whatever usernaming convention works for you. It's just important that you flag any repeated usernames. So for example, on this one, if there was a Joe Smith and a John Smith and they were both in sales, you would have a repeated username and you would want to flag that and either add a number at the end or say, oh, I'm actually going to put the full name for John in his username, whatever works. Yeah, I have a very, very common name. So my WSU email is kayla.miller2. I have a number there. And they use a lot of different variations to avoid repeated emails because a university has a lot of names coming in, right? And yeah, that's that temporary password, which I already mentioned. Make sure that these are randomly generated and then changed on that first login. So next we're going to talk about passwords. This chart shows how quickly a hacker can brute force hack your password as of 2024.
Great.
Yeah. So it's just a little bit blurry here, but we have the number of characters here going from 4 to 18. And then we have how complicated your password is across the top. So we have numbers only is not complicated enough, you can see like at all. And then all the way over to having numbers, upper and lowercase letters, and special characters. That's really where we recommend everyone be. Make it as complicated as possible with all of those different types of characters. And you'll see to get into the green, even on the most complicated one, it looks like we are at 13, is that right? 13 characters. So a lot of password requirements require at least 12-digit passwords. That's been the best practice for quite a while. Lately, some companies have been updating that to require at least 16 digits. Again, that's because hacking is getting faster and faster, especially with the use of AI. So for your own business, you'll want to set password requirements for all your employees. I would recommend 12 as a minimum, and then more than that is good.
So, again, this only works if wherever you're hacked into allows you to have multiple attempts. Don't find it harder to
So
block. You have to
that's
click
not true. So hackers brute force hack by so when your password is saved, it is saved as a hash value. That value is an encrypted form of your password, basically. And every unique password creates a unique hash value. So what they can do is run, but if they can find the hash algorithm, they can try as many things as they want to create the hash value that your password is saved at. So that's how they do it. They can run as many
Okay,
algorithms as they
snapshot
want,
of your
basically.
Device and then trying to match that.
Yeah.
This may be a very elementary question, but most of us sitting here, I would imagine, have at least 30, 40, 50 passwords. Because that's life.
Yeah.
Do you recommend any particular programs to store those passwords?
Yeah,
And because I'm not gonna remember
absolutely.
a 16-digit times 50.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So that's one of our next slides. Yeah, using password managers. And you also touched on one of the most important things, which is you want to make sure you have a unique password for each platform. You don't want to be reusing passwords anywhere. That's really, really important, especially important on things like bank accounts. If you want to put like some personal things under the same password, it's still not recommended, but you could do it. But when it comes to anything to do with your business, you really, really want to make sure you have a unique password for each platform. Other things about passwords, you want to make sure that they're not shared with anyone. They're not written down anywhere. And they're also recommended to be updated at certain intervals. For example, WSU requires a password change every 6 months. So changing your password is a really good practice. In addition to password length and complexity, you want to avoid easily guessable passwords like names, birthdays, pet names, and especially anything that can be found on social media. Also the word password. Just gonna put that out there. And yeah, that brings us to password managers. So if you use the same password and you want to update that, or if you have so many passwords, it's getting hard for you to manage, we do recommend using a password manager. These are considered a best practice right now. So some of the ones that are recommended, that I've heard recommended, are 1Password, NordPass, and Bitwarden. And these are generally a third-party platform that store your password with encryption. That's really important. They store your passwords encrypted.
Could you give those names again?
Yeah, of course. 1Password, NordPass, and Bitwarden. And these often can automatically put your passwords into each site for you as with a plugin. They can also create randomly generated passwords. They can change your passwords for you at certain intervals. So they're really good in that way. Yeah.
What about the?
Yeah, Apple has a password manager.
Has it been proven to be secure? Makes me nervous.
Apple in general tends to be pretty secure. I haven't heard anything specifically bad or good about it. Just make sure that you're using the password manager function. So for example, Google will save your passwords for you on a device. That is not a password manager, but Google does offer a password manager, which is different from just saving your passwords to a device. So just make sure you're using the password function.
Probably not Google, I wouldn't.
Yeah, Google has some security issues. Again, I haven't heard anything specific about their password manager, but I have heard a lot of skepticism of Google being secure in general.
I do it in my own life. And Google password is really convenient for low security, unimportant accounts.
Yeah.
Using subscriptions, but any financial account I keep separate.
Yeah, that's a great point. There are accounts that you may want to be convenient over super protected, and then there are accounts that you need to be very, very protective of, and you have to remember that convenience doesn't need to be a factor in those. You want protection over convenience. Yeah. So that's password managers. The next thing I like to talk about is this little resource. It's called haveibeenpwned.com. It was created by Troy Hunt. He is a Microsoft Regional Director, Microsoft Most Valuable Professional. He's been in the web security industry since the mid-90s, and he built this resource where you can put in your email and it will let you know if it's been included in a breach on the dark web. It's not perfect. It doesn't have access to every single breach out there, but it can tell you if it's included in one of the breaches that they've seen. It also separately has a place to check your passwords. And yeah, if you put your email in here and you see it's been included in a breach, highly recommend updating all of your passwords.
What is the address?
It's called haveibeenpwned.com. That is PWNED.
So what if you find your email has been compromised.
Yeah, you'll want to make sure that any accounts that use that email, your password is updated. You'll want to change any passwords that are associated with that email, change the main email password. You can also check if anyone else has access to your email or to anything associated with your email. For example, in your social media, I was just looking at this yesterday for a different cybersecurity thing. You can go into settings and you can see any devices that your social media access has been saved on. You can approve, I can automatically access it on my phone or my laptop. You can find, you can click on that setting, and then if any other devices have that saved to it, you can remove their access.
I've heard it said that you should just presume that you are hacked and your data has been breached. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I have absolutely heard that. I have heard that social security numbers are a dime a dozen on the dark web right now. Your social security number is probably out there. Yeah.
So how does the sentiment of like pretend everyone is naked and you are too, in terms of understanding that like we're all, vulnerable to a large lot of risks. And I do think it's a little bit, I'm skeptical in thinking that the state could actually prove or show like a validity to being able to fine a small business when it's obviously being driven by economic terrorism. It is a form of economic warfare
Right.
to allow, a nation state to infiltrate a whole bunch of computers. And when you think about the basis of it being that when Microsoft Windows got shipped to the entire first and second world nations, and it had a backdoor built into it by the NSA, and you think that other countries aren't going to follow suit, and then ask small businesses to, basically after they've already jumped through all these regulatory, hoops. So then now we're in the hot seat after, Microsoft already cashed in with the federal government to do this kind of an act. You to think these people are not malicious because of that? That's a pretty big, we're actually still working to create a financially viable either republic or democracy, however you see it. So I'm a little dubious, and I think I'd just like to share that feeling with other small businesses that we're the economic drivers. We shouldn't be bearing the burden of the state's negligence or actually creating these kind of issues in the first place by, sponsoring a huge corporation to work as a surveillance actor. That caused huge effects in the entire region. Microsoft operating that kind of a business model literally toppled huge contracts, just social contracts of business by presuming that I buy a product that has a backdoor built into it, which is why when you say Apple's a good type of device, well, that's because Apple's put their foot down and said the government doesn't have a right to go into people's devices. So I don't know. It's just interesting. I'm just venting about it.
Yeah, no, I understand your frustration. It's very understandable. It's a scary world out there.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a crazy world right now. So we're all doing our best, trying to protect ourselves as much as possible. But yeah, it's frustrating for sure. Next on passwords, again, make sure you change any default passwords. This includes Wi-Fi modems, routers, security cameras. Again, manufacturers often use a standard password. They may use admin or 1234, something that's easily guessed or even known by bad actors. So change any default passwords. And next, multi-factor authentication. In addition to a secure password, multi-factor authentication creates that extra layer of protection. This is often a randomly generated passcode sent to your phone. That's probably the most popular method. There are also authentication apps. These are seen as slightly more secure than the text message alternative. For example, the Google Authenticator app works with most social media. I know it works with Instagram, We also WSU just moved to using authentication apps and not allowing text message authentication anymore. So if you would like to move to an app, I would recommend that. Again, Google Authenticator is a good one. You really want to make sure that you turn on multi-factor authentication for everything that you can, but I would especially recommend social media, bank accounts, and email accounts. Very important. Also, if anyone asks you for your multi-factor authentication code, if someone texts you and says, we're your bank, we just sent you an authentication code, text it to me, or someone calls you and asks you to say the multi-factor authentication code, that's a scam. Never share your multi-factor authentication code. Yeah.
So, I just had a fundraiser website that I created. And, you know, there's lots of information pages and how to participate. And I had a contact me, and I didn't expect anybody actually to contact me. And I had a scammer contact me to do that. And I had a gotcha.
Yeah.
And they still came through. So I pulled that contact off the website. I just removed it.
Yeah.
But-
Yeah, no,
How do we
scammers get
protect-
everywhere.
How do we protect business websites?
Yeah. Like from scamming emails specifically. I think the main thing is just to be able to see a scam. I'm not sure if there are many ways that you can prevent a scammer from finding your email. They find them all the time. I've never seen an email that doesn't get scam emails. Yeah. So we will be going over some red flags to look out for when it comes to scam emails and scams on social media and text message. So yeah, let me know if you have any other questions that come up when we get there.
Don't you typically have to, there's an action you have to take, like you would have to click on the link or like, it's not just passive.
Right. Yeah. When it comes to email scams, yeah, just make sure you don't click on any links, don't download anything, don't reply. Yeah. Next, I did want to show an example of how you can set up multi-factor authentication on social media. See if I can make it any clearer.
Yeah.
That looks good. Oh, nice. Okay. So if you're on Instagram, if you go to your main account page and you click the 3 lines in the right-hand corner, it will bring you to your settings and activity. From there, if you click on Account Center, you will get to your Account Center. And from there, if you click on Passwords and Security, you will get to the Passwords and Security. And then that has 2-factor authentication right there. You'll click on the account that you want to add multi-factor authentication to. And then you will choose whether you want to use an authentication app or a text message or an additional method if that is available. Again, recommended is the authentication app. Text message is also a good layer of protection, so I'm not going to knock text message authentication codes, but authentication apps are the recommended right now. And once you click on that, Instagram will walk you through the whole process of either downloading the app and adding Instagram to your app or putting in your phone number and using the phone number as an authentication method. And for most social media or email platforms, it's going to be very similar. Somewhere in the settings, somewhere in the privacy settings, you'll find password and multi-factor authentication. Okay, the next domain is access control. So in the access control domain, we give system access, we limit it to only authorized users, and then users are given access to only the files, devices, and processes that they need to do their job. This is referred to as least privilege. We want to give them the least amount of information necessary so that they can still do their job. For a small business owner, you probably see all of your business information, right? But as you grow and expand, you'll really want to segment your data by creating distinct boundaries for each type of data. We don't want every employee to have access to private data. This is included, but not limited to personnel records, personally identifiable information like social security numbers, names, addresses, birthdays, all that kind of stuff. sensitive contract or business information, payroll information, bank account numbers, payment card information, and customer and vendor identifiable information. Additionally, you can limit the type of access an employee has. So some workers may need to read specific documents, but shouldn't be allowed to edit them. So back to this inventory spreadsheet example, here we have group assignment. So when you create users, you can also create groups, and groups allow you to set permissions for multiple people at once. So you can give the sales group and all of your employees in the sales group access to a particular document. You can also set that access to read only or allow them to edit the document, just makes it a little bit easier. And then here again, we also have access to the devices. So we're limiting the salespeople to the sales printer and the finance people to the finance printer. The next practice in this domain requires connections to external systems to be controlled and limited. So for example, are there websites that your employees are not allowed to access from company devices? Are they allowed to access Facebook? Are they allowed to access just the company Facebook page, or are they also allowed to access their personal Facebook page? A lot of places will also block access to any untrusted websites. And it's good to make sure that you don't override that. If your Google says, hey, this is not a trusted site, I would recommend just clicking away instead of trying to override and still see the site. And the final practice in this domain covers controlling information that is publicly available. So includes on websites and on your social media. So you may consider designating an employee as a marketing manager and giving them access to your website or social media. I would also very recommend limiting the access. You shouldn't just have all of your employees can post on your social media, right? You want either one marketing manager, or maybe you limit it to just yourself and a marketing manager, or just yourself. You'll just want to make sure that that is limited. Also, you may consider creating brand guidelines and making sure that you review any public posts for grammar to ensure that no private information is included, to make sure that they adhere to your brand guidelines as well. And then make sure that you have a process for removing any improperly posted information, and also removing social media access to employees if they leave your company. Okay, next domain is systems and communications. So in this domain, we control and protect communication at key boundaries of our system and implement separated subnetworks within your system. What this really boils down to is using firewalls. So Windows security settings is this example here. If you go to your settings and then to privacy and security, you will find some protection areas. One of them will be firewall and network protection. When you click on that, you'll see 3 firewalls. You can put a firewall on your domain network. This would be like a business domain, a business network. Then you have your private network. This would be your home Wi-Fi usually. And then your public network. This would be if you're working at a coffee shop, or like right now I'm connected to the bank guest Wi-Fi. It's recommended to have your firewall on for all 3 networks. It's most important for your public network because public networks are very dangerous, but make sure you have it on for all 3.
I have PC and Apple.
Mhm.
With the PC, with the firewall on, I have Norton on there,
Mhm.
and they fight with each other,
Oh, yeah. Interesting.
which is the best to use. Norton antivirus, Norton security. This is called 360 protection or something.
Does your Norton have a firewall function?
Mhm.
Okay. That's interesting. I'm not sure which one would be the best to use. That does happen when you have third-party anti-malware. It can fight with your built-in anti-malware, your built-in firewall. I don't know off the top of my head which one would be recommended to use.
I think it was a couple years couple years ago, and, 5 years ago, using a third party firewall was, preferred to the benefit one with Microsoft. But Microsoft's come a long way, so I came to the conclusion I can use just the, built-in Microsoft one and have fewer technical issues.
I don't worry about it on Apple products.
Yeah,
I
that's,
don't use it.
yeah, that's recommended. I mean, most people, when they talk about Apple, they say, don't worry about antivirus because first, a lot fewer viruses are written for Apple. And also Apple has a lot of security functions that they include. So you generally don't have to worry about it much when you're using an Apple product. But yeah, Apple does have a firewall as well in their settings. Additionally, if you use a phone or a mobile device for a lot of business functions, you can get a third-party firewall option on your phone. If you're using it for really important, really private information, I would recommend getting a firewall for your phone or your tablet. Oh, and also Wi-Fi routers. That was the last thing I want to talk about on this slide. So Wi-Fi routers also have firewalls that can be enabled. And your business internet subscription often comes with additional security features. So I would reach out to your internet service provider, talk to them about their security features, make sure your router firewall is enabled. Okay, next we're going to talk about encryption. So encryption turns your data into unreadable ciphertext until it is decrypted by an encryption key. This can protect your data in transit and at rest. Encrypting your device will protect it if you lose your data or if you lose your device. So for example, if you lose your laptop and it's password protected, a hacker may not be able to access your laptop specifically, but they would be able to remove the hard drive, pop it into their own laptop device, and then access all your data that way. But if you encrypt your device, you encrypt your hard drive. And that means if they take it out, they still can't access it because it is encrypted. So on Windows, you can encrypt your device using BitLocker. This is in Settings, Privacy and Security, and then Device Encryption. You can also encrypt specific devices by right-clicking on a file and selecting Properties and then Advanced. And that will give you the option to encrypt just a specific file. It's really, really important when you're encrypting things that you do not lose your decryption key. You'll write it down somewhere very safe. For Apple, you can use Apple File Vault, and that gives you the option to use your iCloud as a decryption key, as a recovery key, or you can use the traditional encryption key, which again, just make sure you don't lose it. Additionally, there are specific thumb drives that can be encrypted and password protected. So if you are transporting really, really private, secure information, you may want to invest in getting an encrypted thumb drive. And then there's email. So email generally encrypts email. Your email provider, like Gmail or Outlook, they will encrypt your email while it is in transit. That's great. However, when it's stored on a server, it's generally not encrypted. So if you are sending really important information, you may want to look into encrypting your mail at rest, and this would be using Secure Multi-Purpose Internet Mail Extensions, or SMIME. If you're interested in that, I would look up the tutorial for encryption created by whoever you use for email. Like Gmail has a tutorial for setting that up. Outlook has a tutorial for setting that up. And you will need to have it enabled on both the sender side and the receiver side for it to be encrypted. Okay. And next, we're going to talk about public and private Wi-Fi. So it's really important that any business functions are conducted on a private, password-protected Wi-Fi that customers do not have access to. If you're a coffee shop or a hotel or a cafe, you may have a publicly accessible customer Wi-Fi so that people can come in and work on their laptops, things like that. It's, you'll want to make sure that those are separated. Your public customer Wi-Fi should be the free Wi-Fi. It generally isn't password protected, but any business functions need to be occurring on your private business Wi-Fi. They should not be occurring on your public Wi-Fi at all. And then if you are that person in the coffee shop using a public Wi-Fi, it's important that you have your firewall on, and you may want to use a virtual private network or a VPN. This protects your private data by encrypting and masking your IP address. And yeah, they're just a really highly recommended product to be using if you're using public Wi-Fi a lot specifically. Okay, we are on our last practice. I'm feeling people fading. I know this is a lot of information. So we'll get through this last practice and then we'll take a break. So this practice is systems and information integrity. Here we want to update software and applications, use and update anti-malware software, and scan files and systems for malware. So first, like I said before, patches and updates, they do lots of different things. They fix software bugs, they update user interfaces, and they also close discovered hacker entry points. So again, very important. New vulnerabilities are found all the time. So it's really important to keep up to date with updates. You may also want to enable automatic updates. That way you don't have to worry about it quite as much. And if you're not using a software anymore, consider removing it from your device so that you don't have to worry about keeping it updated and you don't have to worry about it as a vulnerability. So a legacy or an end-of-life system is one that the parent company is no longer releasing updates for. These get outdated very quickly, so it's really important that you update to a non-legacy system as quickly as possible. Right now, Windows XP, Windows 7 and 8 are all legacy systems, and Windows 10 is going to be discontinued in 2025. I believe it is October 2025. So if you are using Windows 10, you may want to start planning your upgrades now. So make sure that your native anti-malware is enabled. So for PCs, this is Microsoft Defender. You'll want to enable real-time protection and automatic scans. For a PC, you can find this under Settings, Privacy and Security, and Virus and Threat Protection. Apple has its own systems, and like we talked about, there are very few viruses written for Apple. So Apple users generally don't need to worry about antivirus that much. You can also use third-party anti-malware solutions. Just make sure that you vet the company that you're using. And you may run into that problem where if you're using multiple anti-malware solutions, they may fight with each other. So just be aware of that. The SBDC does not recommend any specific solutions when it comes to third-party anti-malware solutions, but we do recommend your native ones right now, and you can also get those third-party ones.
Yeah, I think about this kind of thing, and I think for most business users, you would do well to really just have a software and IT person really at least once or twice a year sit with you and spend some time really shaping up your software and looking for systems that are just not playing well, helping you it's like a car and it's complicated inside of it, and there's so many things that need to work together, and if you're not an expert, it really can just not work. And I don't know, I think that finding the people who, one, are knowledgeable, willing, and price friendly is probably what I would start looking for in terms of support for small business. Practical support. It'd be able to go into a place like EDC once or twice a year and sit with people that SBDC sent out who are experts to help. Hey, we need to look at this laptop. This is where these people are doing their business. What's going wrong? It's like that is a tech workshop where if you're out at the end of the line on an island where there's obviously a lot of good economic activity happening, but it's not exactly got the population of tech experts, software experts who can help service operators do their job as a business operator. your job is to do your business, not work on your equipment. And it's not to say that working on your equipment isn't part of your job. It's just you're not gonna get very far if you spend your time working on your equipment, not serving your customers and serving your work.
Mhm.
So, I mean, in terms of practical support from EDC, having 2 to 3 sit and work with a tech on your laptop or review your operations for this kind of thing. This is like an introductory. First, but as far as maintenance and support, I'd say that would be huge in the
I
long
agree,
run.
yeah. I definitely agree. Using your experts, using the people who really know what they're doing and those kinds of things. Yeah, utilize them. They're gonna help you for sure. Yeah. So also in this domain, we talk about scanning your computers. So you can enable automatic scans and also run manual scans. And you'll want to make sure you scan all files from external sources like emails when they're downloaded, opened, or executed. And make sure that you don't download documents or applications from untrusted sources. So from emails that you don't recognize, don't download things from them. I've seen people get viruses from downloading documents off the internet from untrusted sources. So just be careful what you're downloading. And that brings us to the end of the CMM. So if you would like to revisit the cybersecurity maturity model in more detail, we do have our on-demand cybersecurity trainings. This is the link for it, but most of you, I think, picked up the flyer with the QR codes. Yes, thank you. That will bring you to the trainings. We have, I believe it's one for each domain, and then we also have an international trade cybersecurity webinar recorded. And yeah, that goes into a bit more detail, refresher from today's presentation. So feel free to use those. Okay, now I'll have let everyone take a break. We'll reconvene in 5 or 10 minutes. Feel free to get some donuts and coffee, ask any questions, and then we'll keep going with today's activity.
Yeah, let's make sure we get back by 10:30.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Thanks for coming all the way out here to do this.
course,
It's
that was
not
sweet to do that.
this place to deliver services.
Yeah, it's gorgeous though. I'm happy to be here.
I hope you get a little time. They don't just whisk you back to school.
No, yeah, I'll be exploring this afternoon.
Well, if you want to do some wine tasting, come on down and see me.
Perfect,
I'm right
thank you.
down next to the ferry.
Are there any questions in the chat right now?
No. we're good.
Great. Okay. Sounds good.
Thanks for fixing that. I kept looking at the screen and I was like, oh, it looks good on there. And I completely forgot.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, there's some snacks over here, water, hot water.
Marley, you know, we came from Lopez, different, so, we have to get you very. Samples, things.
You can almost learn more study in history than you can.
Otherwise, next one's on television. Yeah. So, we have to get on that one, yeah. Okay.
I'll be passing out these in just a second, but these are the policy workbooks. And yeah, the last thing we're covering is scams. So I know she said it's recorded. If you want to look.
Oh,
at the
yeah,
scams
right.
section- Scam section.
We can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome, okay. Everything going okay? Is everything going okay? Awesome.
We can stop. We did a little policy writing activity and then cover scams, and I think we'll have a pretty good chunk of time for it.
It's great, thank you.
Firewall.
Maybe on that.
I mean, at what level do you?
Yeah.
All people. No, person, people. Well, look at this, I open up a suspicion, but
Whatever it was.
Yeah.
This month's. Story about. Apprenticeship program.
Well, maybe I did.
It was this month, I don't think, I thought that was a wonderful story, so. You can, well, by bugger, so how do you make it ready, employer demand. Yeah. And then next some stories about how that's happened.
But I do. Takes the right.
No one can take that.
No, exactly.
It's gonna be.
Sorry.
Yeah, Chris Reed, scored.
I think you were in the office on Monday.
That's right, yeah.
Hiding away.
Yeah. I'm the easy board too.
We were in a.
Great,
And viruses and that link.
Yeah, some of them.
Great.
Yeah.
So.
Oh.
Why is it?
So you're still going to the wine business?
No, well, it is, but I am not in that. I know it's in the 2025. Oh, he's fine.
No, I don't.
That could be it. Still running into different.
You do a lot of these?
Yeah, I've been doing them for about the last year. I'm required to do one in-person event per quarter, but this is my third one this quarter, so
Oh, wow.
getting a bit busy.
This is kind of part of an externship sort of thing.
Yeah, we have a grant. The SVC received a grant to provide some cybersecurity training. It's been interesting.
It's definitely needed out there.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
amazing, the scams that they kind of hit the islands off and on.
I wrote, we had a guy named,
Incredible.
Jason Schmidt.
Early too, I mean,
You see what
cyber
these
scams.
more formal guys, right? There's
30 years
used in that, like,
Yeah.
point,
Have they been like mainly email scams?
A lot of email scams, both, targeted at getting things from businesses and also just personally targeted, but sort of at the level where someone's got the mailing it from somewhere, people out here in the island, and then just shot out all this bizarre emails. So,
Yeah, they're so pervasive right now. I think lately especially, it's been a lot of text message scams. I think I get a scam text message almost every day.
gonna be interested in hearing about some of this stuff, because I tried to run up to the sheriff's department.
Yeah.
Yes, the sheriff was ready to laugh, you know, you do realize this is all horse hockey, and I said, yeah, but
Right.
it's
Yeah.
and it's not just getting me, all kinds of people across the community are getting this particular.
Right.
email scam. Why separately is it sort of seeming to target raffles fraud, and it's not. It's a
Right.
That's
That's really interesting. Going through a few of those. We also do have a few places where you can report them. IC3 and the FTC, I think, out there on the slide.
Attorney General, when it was Bob Ferguson.
Yeah.
Yeah. It seems good.
Gosh, someone would contact us by mail asking to buy cases and cases of crystal. That their representative would buy to get with us to pick up the shipment.
Very specific, yeah.
Yeah, and it had that. The wine shop.
So what's really, it's all very close on paper.
Somewhere in a ballpark.
Oh, gosh.
So, yeah, it's 30.
Well, it was
Right.
only maybe last one.
It's got much more sophisticated.
Yeah.
Last question was.
Look at the wine shop. That's crazy. You're good at that. Yeah, of course.
Everybody's ready.
Yeah,
Oh. Thank you for bringing all this to us.
Yeah, of course.
Very helpful.
You said you'd send links, right?
Yeah, I'll send you the PDF, or sorry, it's a Microsoft Word document for this one, so people can edit it. And the PDF of the slides.
Awesome.
Anything else?
Yeah,
of course.
somebody just asked on chat.
Oh, great.
For a few people we get back. Yeah. Yes, definitely. Well, I'll do it, download the video. No, I'll do that first, so it'll take a few minutes to download the video.
Oh, yeah. I just had to I had to cancel this huge fundraiser. And, it's because my support team, I got sick and nobody would take it. And it's terrible, but now I'm thinking about, I was really worried, talking to Square about all the devices I was
Okay. I'll direct everyone's attention to the handout that I just passed out, the spiral. This is our small business cybersecurity policy workbook. So the first few pages of this workbook go through some of the first steps to getting all this documented. So on page 5, we have a place for your contact information for a service provider. Again, I really recommend that you get in touch with a service provider, find one somewhat in your area so that if anything happens, you have their contact information at your fingertips. You can also put your insurance, financial, and SBDC advisor, maybe your score advisor, your legal contact, all that information. Then we have an inventory of data. So having a list of what types of sensitive data your business collects is really good. That way you know what you need to protect.
I thought so, it's might be a good thing that SCORE could do, is just have a list of of local providers, so. There's good
Oh, that's
progress.
great.
You can also create a classification label system. For example, you may label some information as public, some as internal access only, and some as confidential. Yeah.
So, I'm actually on the audit committee of one of my nonprofits, and, is there a way to contact like our financial service providers and transaction providers and have them tell us who has authorization? So we can audit that list, because other than that, to rely on people self-reporting.
Ask
So
your,
how do I find out, like who has access to our bank account?
okay,
Or our investment accounts, whatever.
right.
So will they tell you that, or,
They should tell you that, especially if you're like the main account, the person with the authorization to know all the information about the account, they should tell you. From what I've seen, I guess I haven't looked into a bank one specifically, but like I said, on social media, you can find in your settings a list of the people who are authorized for the account or the list of devices that are authorized. So for a bank, I'm not sure if it would be in the account settings or if you would have to talk to someone specifically. But yeah, I would recommend, you definitely need a list. So talking to your account head would be a good place to start for sure. So once you've classified your information or created your labeling system, then you can label the types of data you have, and that will help you know who should have access to your data. So for example, once you've labeled something as confidential, you can know that very few people should have access to it. If you labeled something as internal access only, you know that it shouldn't go out on your website, but most of your network may have access to it, things like that. So your next list is the type of data and who should have access to it. Then we have an inventory of your devices. It's really important that you know all of the devices that are being used for business function. That way, again, you know what to protect. And same with your software that you're using. And then the next page goes through your antivirus and anti-malware. They're often one system depending on what you're using. And then also your data backups and creating a schedule for updating your antivirus, running scans, and a schedule for creating data backups is a really good practice. And after all of that set up, we get into the actual practices of the CMM. So each section will start with a clarification about what this domain covers, and then each practice has a place for you to write a policy statement and then a more detailed procedure. And each procedure starts with some clarifying questions that you will probably want to answer in your procedure documents. It's not comprehensive. Depending on your business, you may need some more information, but it's a really good starting place for your policy, or for your procedure. And the next thing that we're going to do is just a little policy writing activity. So let me bring it up. I might have to reshare.
Yeah.
And I think that the projector is probably set up to share PowerPoint specifically, which makes sense because I did not select anything when it started sharing. But we'll do it verbally. So I like to get some audience interaction for this one. So we're going to start with the first policy, which is physical protection. And the first question of physical protection is, how will the business limit physical access to organizational information systems, equipment, and the respecting operating environments? And some of the other things you might want to talk about in this is what areas of the business are open to the public and which areas are going to be those ones that you secure. So does anyone want to be a guinea pig for writing this policy? We are on page 12.
I was on 14.
Thank you. Okay, so
Select specific people and secure physical building with signs,
yeah.
employees only.
So we'll start with what areas of your business are open to the public. So you said you have a retail business, right?
I did.
What do you have now?
Well, right now I'm not.
Oh,
Getting
okay.
ready to-
Got it. Okay. Well, let's use your retail business as an example. What areas of your business are open to the public?
Just through the front door,
Mhm.
access to the retail area.
Awesome. And what hours is it open to the public?
10 to 9.
And our online person will see my typing, but so great. We have the public area is accessible through the front door. Only the retail area is open to the public, and it's open during 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. And then how will the business limit the other areas? So what do we have in place to make sure customers don't get into the other areas?
We have a locked back door access, employees only. And then there is a door from the retail area back to the office.
Awesome. And is the office door locked?
From the retail area, no,
Okay.
it's open, that employees come and go out of the retail area into the office.
Does it have a sign on it that says employees only?
No,
Oh, so that might be an area for us to do. So let's I'll highlight
it's kind of
needs.
obvious.
Yeah. Employee only signs, never a bad idea though. So needs a sign.
Yeah, customers would have to go behind the counter,
Yeah.
so there's a physical barrier.
Okay, physical barrier is great. That's also good.
Defensive against blood rats.
There you go.
Yeah. Okay. And we would also want to put in our procedure document, again, be really specific. So what is kept in the office? What equipment might be kept in there?
Computers,
Yeah, awesome. And then we already kind of said they're secured with that physical barrier of the counter. It's very obviously employee only, but we may want to also add a sign. And then at the end of the night, what are your procedures for locking the office door, back door, and front door?
the gates, the front door, it's a storefront, so there's sliding glass doors like your jacket, those are locked.
Perfect.
And the lights are turned off, the cameras turned on. The door between the retail area and the office, merchant and supply room is locked, and then finally the back door is locked.
Perfect.
And there's only myself and closing employee that have a key. And on the weekends, it's 2 employees.
So you covered which employees or company roles will be authorized to access this area. So we have the people with the keys, and then during the day, any employee, it seems like, can access the office because it will be unlocked, but is locked at the end of the day. We also started to cover, does your business use monitoring systems? So we have security cameras, security guards, alarms. We have security cameras. That's great. Yeah, so that would be most of your procedure already put in place. You'll probably want to make put it into more words than I've typed up here, but we have the retail area is open to the public during 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. Access is through the front door. We have a locked back door access to the employee only area. We have the door to the office from the retail area has a physical barrier. We may want to add an employee only sign. The computers, backup drives, supplies, and equipment are kept in the employee only office. And then at the end of the night, the front door is locked, lights are turned off, cameras turned on. We lock the front and the back door and the office door, correct? And the alarm's on. Oh, great. Yeah, and then we only have the business owner and the closing employee or employees having keys. Yeah, so that's like a really great outline for your procedures.
I didn't
Mm.
have signs that said alarm on premises.
Yeah, you could add those. That would be good.
I don't think that's really a good term.
Yeah, it depends. You could add a sign for alarm or surveillance. Yeah. It's also really a great one for a retail. Is there anyone who has a home business today? You have a home business? Okay. So for a home business, it's going to be pretty similar. So you'll want to make sure you have a list of who has keys to your house. If you work in a specific office, you could lock that door if you would like to. You could also get a safe or a filing cabinet that's locked and have specific times when it's locked, have only specific people who have that key. If you have a home alarm system or a home security system at all, you can put it into your procedure documents. That way, it's, you know, an evidence document. You can say that you're working on securing your area. And you'll want to have a list of like anyone who has access to your house. So probably family. And then in the case that you have visitors, you may want to have a policy for either locking your office door or locking that filing cabinet with specific equipment, things like that. What about some other businesses? So your wine, similar to retail, do you have any other physical securities?
We have an alarm system.
Mhm.
The building that we're in has cameras everywhere. Yeah, it's pretty secure.
Yeah, so in your procedure documents, you would just want to outline your alarm system, when it's on, your security system, your cameras, when they're on. Yeah, so that's really great. What about you? What do you have going on?
I have a very small studio, so
Mhm.
that's always locked. I
Uh-huh.
have security camera, on the property.
Great.
And if I travel anywhere, my computer's always tucked away, locked.
Awesome. Great. And what about you guys? What do you have for? Right.
And it's not retail space or anything, it's just, particular contractors, so there's a warehouse and an office.
Mhm.
And so really in the office, it's just the two of us and the owner.
Mhm.
Yeah, so we're not really public facing.
Yeah, so your procedure documents will just also list anyone who has keys to your warehouse and your office, when it's locked, and any other, if you have a security system of any kind on your warehouse, it would be documented there. Yeah.
So are these sorts of procedures,
Mhm.
if there was a breach
Mhm.
and Washington State wanted to fine us for something, these procedures will help protect us?
Yeah, they'll help. And they'll also help with, if you want cyber insurance, you will need to have some kind of written documentation of what you have in place.
How much security does right?
Yeah, so when it comes to QuickBooks, your responsibility will be that secure password, right? I haven't worked with QuickBooks specifically, but I have to assume that they offer multi-factor authentication. They probably should, do they?
Oh, there's QuickBooks Desktop and QuickBooks Online. So there's
Okay.
different stories for both.
Got it.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
actually have a third option, which is essentially desktop that is housed on a cloud and backed up for us on a cloud by a third
Okay.
party vendor.
Mhm.
So I think that there's probably some security measures.
Mhm.
The third party one.
Yeah, usually cloud service providers have security measures in place. I would recommend checking out their policies. They probably have them somewhere on their website. You may be able to talk to someone specifically if you have any questions. And that way, on your policies, when it comes to securing data, um, you can put in what their policies are, what they are covering for you. That way you have it written down that you did your due diligence, you checked them out, you asked them what they're doing. That's really good to have that documented. Yeah, and then again, making sure that your device has a good password. Consider encrypting your device if you travel with it, especially, and having good passwords on your QuickBooks. Also, accounts for your QuickBooks. If you have multiple people accessing your QuickBooks, you may want to have those different accounts so that you know who made what changes, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Physical security, detail that is, not everybody is as aware about the RFID stuff, but an RFID blocker type of device is a physical security for business chips, because these are RFID count chips, so that the information itself can be skimmed and then used fraudulently. So having the physical security of the RFID wallet, and then traveling with mobile devices. Let's say you're dealing with surveillance or even, some cyber stalking, like, hey, we want to know who you are going to go see when you travel out of state to talk to a vendor. Well, you could put your phone and put it inside of a blackout RFID bag, so it stops communicating with the network. And so when you're traveling or doing something like that, and you're doing some sensitive activity that could become a secret that someone would exploit, you can have a blackout bag, put your laptop or your phone in if you're doing anything that is physically. And so there's this other cyber level of physically securing a device electronically, which is not like locking it up, but actually making it so the network can't see it.
Yeah, that's an option for sure. And that also kind of brings us back to risk management. So if we want to accept, how much risk are we accepting with the things that we're doing, and just making sure that we're understanding that. And there are some risks that we accept, there are some that we avoid, and there are some that we work on reducing, right? Yeah. See if there's anything else I want to point out for this. Yeah, let's talk briefly about visitors. So the first clarifying question for visitors on page 13 is, how will the business greet visitors? So depending on your business, you may have a receptionist who, again, gives them a visitor badge, has them sign in. Or if you're like a retail space, you may want to have a policy for all employees who are out front that says, you will say hello to the person walking in the door. You will make sure that they know that you know that they're there, right? Are there areas of the business where visitors are allowed to enter without escorting? So they're allowed into that front retail space. If you're in an office or in a warehouse, you'll probably say, no, if a visitor comes in, we need to be with them the whole time, right? And if you do ever have a visitor for your warehouse or office, I would recommend having that audit log of having them sign a piece of paper or have a digital record of where they visited, when they visited, and who was supervising them. That way, if anything happens, you have that record. How are the areas separated from the secure areas? So this one's a little bit redundant of the first one, but we want to have it here too, talking about that physical barrier to the employee only access. Maybe having signs specifically. And then how will visitors be required to sign in upon an exit and entry if that is necessary, if they're expected to wear a badge, and how they would be escorted through those secure areas. So when it comes to visitors for a home business, you may just say, they're not allowed in the office, we lock that door. It might be as simple as that. It will depend on what your preference for that, but you want to have it in writing so that you know what you're doing with visitors. Yeah. Any questions on policy writing right now? Okay, I just wanted to go through a few. So I think we'll wrap up this activity. You can let me know if you have any questions that come up on policy writing, and we will move on to scams. So that one's already shared. That's great. Let me share it again with the Zoom. And check the chat. Great. Okay. Awesome.
I think you're right, just hire somebody.
Yeah.
Well-
Like, so time consuming.
The experts are always, it's like you always use the appropriate tool. That's one decision-making thing. It's like,
Use the tool.
use the tool, use an expert. And finding an expert, really, that's why I was kind of getting at this being like if it is a regional concern now in Washington, because we're just being targeted, particularly because of the tech companies or wealth or Washington's place in the national, whatever. It seems like in order for small business to succeed and not have, these issues crop up and become what really slows small business down, that it is a central issue to making it work, and having that administrative assistance so that single operator businesses can actually run their businesses, not become like burdened simply with just doing administration.
Yeah.
And I heard it yesterday. I was talking about planes, flying planes, and this applies, bear with me. When you have a problem on a plane, the problem the pilot has is that he starts looking at the problem and stops flying the plane. We're not here to administrate. We're here to run business. We want to succeed. We have to actually do our operational activities that are not, going into the weeds of being administrators. And so for small business assistants to work, they need to really be assisting the operators in solving that problem and finding technicians and finding, support. And this is self-assessment, obviously, is the critical, because you have to know as the operator, what really are my risks? What sensitive information or, I think a little bit of it. What is the common denominator for sensitive information? Is it customers? Like really what gets hacked and becomes an issue? Like, what does the data say with small businesses? What's happening? What's resulting in litigation? What's resulting in actual business losses? Is it customer, bank identification that's getting hacked? Is it customer, addresses that are getting hacked? What are the things that are getting hacked that are
It can be anything is the thing, right? The ones that result in litigation is any personally identifiable information, and that's pretty broad: social security numbers, names, addresses, especially if they're all together. And that results in litigation because you are expected to pay for credit monitoring and things like that. Payment account information is also up there for sure.
Emails, looking for money.
Yeah.
Through access to bank accounts or through ransomware. That's what they're looking.
In other words, you will always have a job.
So for the cybersecurity maturity model, again, this was created by the Department of Defense, this particular model, and it is the one that is required if you want to contract with the government. So if you're interested in contracting with the government, you have to create your policies and procedures for at least the level 1 of the CMM, which we just covered. And then you will have to do the self-assessment And there is a self-assessment guide provided by the Department of Defense. And if you're contracting with the government and you're handling very sensitive information, you may also have to go through CMM level 2 and 3, and those require actual certification. But level 1 just requires a self-assessment. So this link to the self-assessment guide, if it is something that you're interested or need to do, that will be provided in the slides when I get them sent out. Okay, and now we are on to common scams. So there are tons and tons of scams out there, right? One of the most prevalent one is phishing scams. This can be email, it can be text message, it can even be phone calls, but they are generally trying to get you to click on a link or otherwise provide your private information. There's also lookalike websites. These can be really sophisticated. One example that I've heard go around is some people receiving an email that seems like it's from their bank. They click on the link in that email. It brings them to a login page that looks like their bank login page. They provide their credentials. It says you put in your password wrong, and then it will send you over to your actual bank login page. And then you'll log in, you'll see your bank, and you'll think everything is normal, everything's totally fine. But that first page that you were on took your credentials. So for that one, and for phishing in general, we really, really say, do not click on links in emails. That's one of the biggest things that you can do. There's also lots of different social media scams on there. One of the ones that I saw go around was a survey saying, I'm having a baby and I'm looking for an old-fashioned baby name. What was your grandma's name? And that's a really common security question. So anytime that you're giving out information, remember that it's personal information and you may not want to be providing it to people, right? And again, that biggest thing is do not click on links. So we're gonna go over a few examples of some text message scams. I get these all the time. There are some red flags. For example, this one is asking me to finish a survey that I never started. Those are really big red flags. If you won a contest you didn't enter, if you received a business loan you didn't apply for, those are some really obvious ones. Also, a lot of them will have a lot of urgency in them. They're trying to get you to act really quickly. So if you see really tight time frames, hurry, don't miss this, that kind of language, that should make you suspicious. This particular example also has a URL in it, and I wanted to talk a little bit about URLs here. So this one here says qvctupperware.com, right? And the way that URLs work is everything before the .com is the main website name. So in this case, if it was actually from QVC, it would probably look something closer to qvc.com/Tupperware. All that extra information to get you to a specific page on the website comes after the .com.
What about a Saudi Arabian prince that wants to give me $1 million?
Yeah, that's another red flag for sure. Anyone trying to give you money.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, when it comes to URL codes, if it starts with HTTP, that is insecure. If it starts with HTTPS, that is secure. However, it doesn't necessarily mean that the website is trusted. It just means that the data is transmitted with encryption. So if the person transmitting the data is encrypting it, but then is a bad actor on the other side, he's running a bad server, it's not necessarily meaning trust this website, but do not trust HTTP websites. Yeah.
I've noticed checking into one of my bank accounts that they changed the homepage. It's been the same for years and years and years, and they like refreshed it with a new picture. I didn't want to log in. It's just, it really took, I had to call the bank, you know, and she said, oh no, they've refreshed.
That's good. Being careful is good. It's a good job. Yeah. Next I wanted to highlight package scams. I have seen so many of these, especially in the holiday season. They really know most people are waiting for a package at some point, right? So these are text message scams that say we have a package waiting for you. We need some extra information from you. Click this link to give us that information. USPS, FedEx, they all have on their website, we do not ask you for personal information through unsolicited text messages. These are not real. Yeah.
Included left on there is it's an international phone number.
Oh, also that, yeah. And then the other one is a random Gmail account, which that would be kind of weird if a USPS person was using a Gmail account too, yeah. So those are some good red flags as well. Yeah, so package scams, look out for them. They happen a lot. They're always a scam.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And yeah, there's that weird Gmail.
You wanna get a horse in the wagon.
Yeah.
Some old time cold coins and just back to the basics.
So this is an example of an email phishing scam. AI has made it a lot harder to see what a scam is. We used to have red flags of typos and misspellings, especially because a lot of these scammers are from other countries, so English is their second language. We could really spot those mistakes. Now AI has kind of erased a lot of those mistakes. But there are still some red flags we can look for. So this particular example is from a WSU email. You may see a WSU email and think, oh, I trust WSU, but WSU is a really large organization. Students are leaving all the time. They don't close out their email. It's there. No one's looking at it. They get hacked quite a bit. So here we have a generic greeting. We have the WSU email account is asking me to send it to a random Gmail account. That's kind of weird. We have this is a job offer. It's asking for my resume, my email. That is not my EDU email. It's asking for my phone number. It's asking for a lot of personal information. Anytime someone is asking you for personal information and you don't know them, you should be really suspicious of that. This particular example also says that it's from the Career Center at Washington State University. So just for comparison, I have an email that's actually from the Career Center. So here we have the official logo, the official colors, crimson and gray. We also have it saying, hi, Kayla. It knows my name. That's not a generic greeting. Even then, we can't always trust this. We want to be suspicious of everything. That's kind of the thing with cybersecurity. We want to be suspicious all the time. So even on an email like this, we do recommend using your own browser instead of clicking on any links.
As a side note, I called in to an organization and I got an AI voice and she had a breath at the end of each word. What?
That's very weird.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. That was unnerving.
Well, yeah, and at this point, it hasn't really happened, the level that I've seen it yet, but I think it goes along the line with like, when you're trying to get someone to give you information, you want them to be someone you trust. So honestly, having the ability to counterfeit someone else's voice and engage you with a voice that is one of the easiest way to I didn't think I was talking to somebody who is phishing or hacking me. I thought I was talking to my relative,
Yeah.
and
Deep
that
fakes.
seems like one of the more
Scary.
really scary and very, very real.
Yeah.
More real than people. Partly it's just like, well, that can't be real. That's too scary. No, actually, that's actually
The technology is getting there. It is
Yeah.
really scary. Yeah.
It was a weird interaction.
Yeah.
Right, so then I ask them a random question and they don't know how to answer.
Yeah.
It's weird.
So the
Yeah.
bottom line, what you're saying, don't click on
Yeah.
anything, but if you get an email from this, go to the website that you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And log in and then. look for your
Exactly.
messages.
Especially important if from banks. If you get an email from your bank, go to your own browser, log in the way that you normally do. Yeah. So next we're gonna talk about some social media scams. There are lots of different social media scams on there. A big one is romance scams. This is when someone DMs you. They may talk to you for quite a while, try to gain your trust, and then eventually they'll ask for money. They may say it's an emergency. They may say they're traveling and they're out of money. We've heard these scams before, but now they're migrating onto social media. And again, they may be talking to you for quite a while. They may really invest the time into getting you to trust them. Some things that are signs of a romance scam are people avoiding video chats, right? They don't want you to see their face. There might be some inconsistent stories. Their account may have unrealistic photos or no photos. And then requests for money, always a big red flag.
You're a 70-year-old man and a 25-year-old woman. See that?
Yeah, that's right. For sure. Then we have shopping scams. These are advertisements for unbelievably low prices, and just like really good sales. If you see those kind of things on social media, be a bit wary. I would recommend if it says it's from H&M or something, go to the actual H&M site on your browser, see if that sale is showing up. Some other red flags that you might see with shopping scams are limited or no contact information on their websites, negative reviews or no reviews, and then no secure payment options. So if someone is trying to get you to shop on their site and they are an HTTP, an insecure website, you do not want to be putting any payment information into that ever. You should research seller reviews and check out their return and refund policies and just generally be suspicious when you see really good deals, right? Then there's survey scams. They're really just looking for private information on you, but it says, oh, we're from this organization that's doing a good thing. Fill out the survey for us, right? You'll want to make sure that you're checking the source of any kind of survey that you fill out online, that you are only filling out surveys for reputable organizations. And if they're asking you overly personal questions, if they're asking you things that you're like, I don't know if I want to be providing this, don't provide it, right? Then there are job scams. These are unsolicited job offers. I get these all the time through WSU emails specifically because they're targeting students who need jobs. But if you get an unsolicited job offer, automatically be suspicious of it, especially if it has too high of a salary. I get a lot that say $500 a week, working 2 hours a day, things like that. Also, if there's a payment request for your job offer, that's a red flag for sure. And just generally make sure you verify your source and the job details of any kind of job offer. And then there are investment scams. You can see these come up a lot. Some of the red flags are guaranteed high returns with no risk. If you are talking to a real investment person, they probably won't be talking quite that freely, saying no risk at all, guaranteed returns, things like that. You'll probably also see time pressure for investment. Invest right now or you won't get anything. This is the time, right? Payment requests. And then if you get an investment offer and if you see an investment scam kind of thing, make sure you do your research and even seek professional advice, especially if it's something you're actually considering. Talk with someone who you trust in their financial things. Also, if an investment is in cryptocurrency, be a bit more suspicious of it. It is unregulated. So those lots of payment requests are made through cryptocurrency on online scams specifically. Again, some of those red flags that I highlighted throughout, but I want to make sure we talk about again. Any kind of payment requests on social media, be very suspicious. Personal information requests, any unsolicited messages, accounts that have generic pictures, content, or language can be bot accounts, especially if their name is like AL157XXX something, be wary of those and avoid clicking on any links. Also, if you see something that is definitely a scam, if someone gets to you with a scam, you can also report it. So for this, especially on social media, you'll want to document the scam with screenshots. You'll want to block and report the scam account. You can file a report with the social media platform. That doesn't always work. Social media platforms aren't super great about taking scammers down, but you can also file a complaint with the FTC at reportfraud.ftc.gov, and you can file a complaint with IC3, which is the Internet Crime Complaint Center. And these are a few other red flags, acronym to help you remember some of these other red flags. Sensational, things being too good to miss, made to draw your attention. You should be suspicious of that. The tone of hackers is often hostile, trying to get you to act quickly, being aggressive. On the other side, it can be very friendly, trying to get you to bring down your defenses and get you to trust them. So that kind of goes both ways. Unfamiliar, any messages that come from unknown senders. If you do not recognize the source or you didn't expect an email or a call, you're going to want to be really skeptical of anything from an unfamiliar source. Too good to be true. So large cash rewards, things like that. Definitely be wary of those. Urgency, a lot of scams will put that deadline. Again, trying to get you to act quickly without thinking about it too much. And then personal information. Most legitimate sources are not going to ask for your personal information in the same way that scammers do. So just be really wary anytime someone is asking for your personal information. Next, I want to talk about ransomware. Ransomware is an attack that locks you out of your own system and it demands payment to restore your access. If you pay a ransom, you are more likely to get targeted again because the hackers know that you're willing to pay. So we do recommend that you don't pay ransoms because it can be, well, both you have to pay the ransom and you might not be able to afford that, and then you may get targeted again. So when it comes to ransomware, one of the best things, the best protections against ransomware is having a data backup. If you have your own data backed up, you can restore your own access. And if you are the victim of a ransomware attack, you'll see a pretty scary pop-up, something kind of like this, but it'll probably have some information on send money here, we want this much money, stuff like that. And what you'll want to do is unplug everything as quickly as possible and get in touch with a service provider and then restore your own backup. If you have automatic backups happening, it's really important that you unplug everything as quickly as possible, because if the automatic backup happens while the ransomware attack is there, then your backup now has the attack in it. Mhm.
So I had an elderly friend, I told her she wanted help with her computer, and I told her I would help her set everything up, this and that. So she's fine with the computer, she's using it, she's shopping online. And all of a sudden she got this red screen and it said, "This is Microsoft. Your account has been compromised. Call this 800 number and we will help you." She didn't call me. I said, "If you ever have a question, please call me." She didn't do that. She called the 800.
Yeah.
So then she had to pay $600. Then after it was all over, she called me and she says, "I just had to pay $600 to get my computer fixed." Oh my God.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
rough.
Yeah, so I had to wipe the hard drive.
Yeah.
But it's like, I don't know.
Yeah, and that brings up another great point. If you see a crazy pop-up like this and it has a number on it, never call that number. If it says it's Microsoft, go to a different browser, go on your phone, find an actual Microsoft helpline, call them, see what they say. Never use a number from a scary pop-up like that.
Write that number down so you can report it.
Yeah, that is a great point. Definitely do that. There's also a lot of gift card scams out there right now. So first and foremost, if anyone asks you online to pay them through gift cards, that's a scam. I don't think it's ever not been a scam. But there are so many different people doing this. They can claim to be the IRS, they can claim to be your utility company, they may claim to be your boss. That one's a bit more reasonable, right? Maybe your boss needs gift cards for a fundraiser or something. That's a little bit more believable. But anyone asking you payment through gift cards, it's a scam. Don't send the code on the back of a gift card to anyone. Yeah. These can also come from a loved one's hacked email as well. And there are a few other ways that gift card scams pop up. People will sell empty gift cards online and say like, oh, this is a $50 gift card, but I'll give it to you for $20. And in reality, there's nothing on it. And then also people will go into grocery stores where they have those racks of gift cards and they'll tear off the back, get the code for the gift card and drain it without paying for it. So if you're buying a gift card in a store, check the back for damage. And the safest way to buy a gift card is to go up to the actual store clerk and ask them for one from under the desk.
How do you protect yourself with things like Venmo?
In what way specifically?
Or just the security?
Yeah. So again, this kind of goes back to accepting risk versus avoiding risk. Anytime that you're using a payment platform, you are accepting some level of risk. I haven't heard of many like breaches necessarily from Venmo, but there are scams that happen for sure. So one of the things is just make sure that you're only interacting with trusted people on Venmo. I would say your Venmo should probably be private for the most part. You don't want it publicly out there necessarily. Yeah, it just comes back to acknowledge that you have risk involved there because you do. And you can also avoid it. If you don't need to use Venmo, you can avoid the risk by not using Venmo. Yeah.
What about PayPal, that platform?
Yeah.
It just seems to be another layer.
Mhm. Yeah, no, same exact thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're using PayPal, you are adding to your risk. And you can either accept that if you need to use it and double check their security standards. If you're using them, I would recommend, you read through them, see how they're protecting their clients. But yeah, the only way to avoid it is to not use it. But if you need to use it, you are accepting some level of risk there. Yeah. So the next one we're going to cover is business email compromise. This is a really, really big one. I think one of the most important ones that we're covering today. So in business email compromise, an employee, vendor, or another trusted email is hacked. Then the hacker pretends to be the person whose email they hacked, and they ask for a payment. So in this example, the hacker has read through your email string. They may cite different conversations. They may cite personal details. Then they will say that they changed their payment account and you need to send this new payment or this new payroll, whatever, to a new account. They may also include a fake phone number in the email. And they're banking on your trusted relationship with the account that they've hacked. So seeing an example like this, it's really hard to know how to protect yourself, right? It really seems like they're the person they're hacking. They've read your emails. They are impersonating this person very well. So how do you protect yourself? And that answer is policy. This can only be fixed through policy and employee training. So you want to have a policy to never change payment information without confirmation. And that is face-to-face confirmation or voice-to-voice. And if you're doing voice-to-voice, you need to confirm with a known phone number, not the phone number in the email requesting the changed payment, but with a different phone number that you've already collected from that person.
Yeah, I'm seeing it with these new AI scrapers going on to websites and on board of directors of nonprofits or your board of directors of your company, and then faking communication from the names you read.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. And again, that's why that policy is so important, especially if a CEO, if a boss email is hacked, you want those the people reporting to that person to know that they need to confirm because if that policy is in place and it's your boss asking you for this payment, you're going to say, oh, of course, it's my boss. Of course, I'll do that for them. you need to have that policy in place because otherwise so much money can get lost very, very quickly. Yeah. And that kind of brings us to best banking security practices. So first, when it comes to business bank accounts, we want to reconcile our accounts daily. This is because with a business bank account, you have 24 hours to report unauthorized ACH transactions. Personal account holders have 60 days, but as a business owner, you have 24 hours. So you need to reconcile accounts daily and then report fraud immediately. If you don't report it within that 24 hours, your bank will not be able to do anything. Also, avoid using paper checks. Paper checks are the highest technology, bank technology payment option when it comes to fraud, because paper checks, they have all your bank information right on there, right? People can wash them, people can do lots of different things with paper checks. So if you can avoid using paper checks, I would definitely say avoid them. And then use your bank technology. Banks have tons and tons of ways that they secure accounts. This includes multi-factor authentication, and always put that on. Dual control, so that 2 authorized people have to approve a transaction. There are IP address, day, and time restrictions. That way, any payment requests that are made outside of your workday or outside of the US are automatically screened. And then there's also positive pay, which is where account activity is compared to a pre-authorized list of ACH debits, and any unrecognized debit is sent over to the account holder for authorization. And also alerts. So if you have alerts on large payments, large withdrawals, you can have alerts again for days and times. Using all of those kinds of security technologies is really important for your bank accounts.
Best practice, which is falling slightly outside of some of this stuff, which is a personal practice for me, is I try to do most of my business communication in person.
Yeah.
Which is a diversion from me setting it up as my standard way of doing all my communications with people is to have phone, potentially suspect, or email, potentially suspect. Now I've diverted all of my business into, I go to someone's office, you know, I say, hey, can I make an appointment? We get an appointment, and then I come back and talk to them face to face. No emails, no phone calls required. It's an office, me going in there and talking, make an appointment, and I come back and meet face to face.
Yeah.
I basically diverted a whole bunch of potentially, you know, difficult, fraudulent, encumbered activity into an in-person activity. It is my best practice.
It's the way to avoid risk, right?
I'm
Yeah.
avoiding risk by doing that, and it seems weird, you know, but you realize the kind of storm we're heading into. Think about it. You're gonna do things in person and make agreements like that in person, and you can rely on shaking someone's hand and saying, we're making this deal, and that's it. If you can't make that deal and you can't take that risk, you shouldn't be making that contract. You know, and I think that's what I'm trying to do, is head back into the direction of like, we guarantee what we do by trusting each other.
Yeah.
That's good business. And when you have too many linkages involved in this whole how we make deals, each step of that whole procedure becomes potentially a pitfall. You know, instead of going, I bump into my, you know, neighbor or fellow villager in person and arrange to set some transfer of something up, just like we did 100 years ago. You know, not relying on the digital platform as heavily. Honestly, because I think that's really what's happened, is all of these companies have preferred their methods and basically insisted that the entire population fall in line with the way they like to do business because they're charging for it. That's great business practice if you're running those companies. It's not good if you're a small business to think that you should just accommodate. And it is hard when you're in the middle, I think, because you're somewhere between a bigger corporation and on a one-person shop, trying to decide what risks do I take and how do I create a best practices with that.
Yeah, it's definitely a balance of like, what can I do? What can I avoid while still working with everyone I need to work with? So this is one of my favorite slides. Yeah. So cybersecurity policies, they only work if all of your employees are trained in them, especially when it comes to scams. It only takes one person to click on a bad link or to approve a payment change without double checking that. So train all your employees on your cybersecurity policies, on how to see scams and avoid scams, and also create a company culture where people are not punished for asking those questions, for double checking. You want to make sure your employees are comfortable coming to you with an email and saying, I don't know if this is a scam or if this is real, right? You want them to be skeptical and be comfortable asking you those questions. And your written policies will also help you with that employee training. Okay, any questions? We have about 30 minutes for questions, so.
So as far as, like, what was I gonna say? I've been seeing commercials for, your web browsers. And on TV, there's one that says that, what is it? I look blank on the whole thing. Chrome, I use Chrome for my web browser. How secure is it compared, or it keeps track of you? It tracks all your data.
They all do.
They all do.
Fire, there's Foxfire, and then there's another one.
There's Safari.
Safari,
Yeah.
and it says it does not track your, does it or does not? What's everybody's web browsers? What, who you?
So SBS uses Chrome because we use PC. I would say you should assume that it's keeping track of you.
You can delete.
Yeah.
You can delete your data. It can still be saved by your internet service provider. So, you know, Comcast or wherever you get your Wi-Fi, they also have all that data and you can delete it off your device, but your internet service provider will still have that data on you.
Right.
Same with incognito mode, that just makes sure that it doesn't get in your history. It doesn't mean that your internet service provider can't see what you're doing. So yeah, when it comes to those online spaces, you just kind of have to assume that someone out there, those companies are watching you and they know what you're doing. That's kind of the world we're living in right now.
And your device that listens to
Yeah.
your conversation. I want to go
Yeah.
to Greece. Now I'm gonna get ads.
Yeah.
I did one time, there was something on TV and I grabbed my phone and took a picture of it. All of a sudden I got a hit on my iPad about advertisement about what was on my TV.
Yeah.
I thought, well, that was interesting.
Your photos can now read
Yeah.
words, right? Because you can search for things in your photos, kind of crazy. Also your phones will pick up on who you're around. So if you're around your family with kids, you'll probably start getting some advertisements for more kid things like that. So it knows who you're in close proximity with more often, and it uses that again to do those targeted ads. Targeted ad space is really interesting and
Yeah.
kind of scary. Yeah.
I call it a Smurf phone
Hmm.
because everyone's turning blue. And it's basically that we're all getting assimilated into something, whether we like it or not. And that's
Yeah.
the part about it is like, you know, it is a little, this is kind of, this kind of creepy, cringy feeling, but we tend to look at this kind of incursion as like alien or foreign, but it's actually a repetition of what nature has done for millennia, because all of this subtle switching and coding is all, you know, how nature has, you know, trained us to like apples or, you know, the things that we for so long. And so I just think it is that it's a strange adaptation to be going through. I mean, honestly, because it's weird to think that like, you know, something or someone thinks they know everything about you. And that's like really how you know someone, is like their data. Like, I mean, it's true, we all are kind of made up of all this data, and then like that, it's just, I don't know, a grain of salt
Mhm.
with all of it.
Yeah,
I just wanted to mention that I think that this program is really great, that you're going around the state and helping small businesses.
Yeah.
And, yeah, I'm in between businesses right now, but this is really helpful for me because I
great.
help other people.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I'm very appreciative that you're here.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We had an interesting, we have an annual luncheon every year. And so we were selling tickets and we had this guy on the
Thank you. Thank you.
and said that he couldn't come to our annual because it was a fee, it was like $30 or something like that. They couldn't come, but so he was selling his ticket. And we're like, so I mean, you have to be really careful about everything.
Yeah,
Yeah, and he's from Nicaragua, so it's like, why did he buy one of our tickets to our
Very
annual
weird.
luncheon?
yeah.
But yeah, it's just little weird things like that.
Well, I have domain.com, I don't know if any of you